The timing of all of this, again, this revelation is the hinge point between apostasy and restoration, scripturally speaking. The first vision that we discussed last week is meant to be that hinge point, that tipping point. Apostasy is ending, restoration is beginning. But notice how the Lord describes the apostasy in section 1 of the Doctrine and Covenants. For this, go to verse 15 and 16. For they have strayed from mine ordinances. And straying, yes, it might be culpability. There might be some guilt there, but there might be some conscious rebellion. But think about sheep. And all we like sheep have gone astray. We have strayed from the flock and the fold of the Good Shepherd. Sometimes that's simply not knowing where I'm supposed to be. And through no fault of my own, I find myself a little lost lamb. But if the world has strayed from the Lord's ordinances, and then second phrase, and have broken mine everlasting covenant. Oh, now we have some challenge here. Is it broken because I broke it? Or is it simply broken because we didn't know how to keep it in working order? We lost at some point of the apostasy servants that had God's own authority. This is my authority and the authority of my servants. But that ceased to be at some point. The crucifixion of Christ and then the subsequent martyrdom of the apostles, eventually getting to a point where Paul, who is trying to battle the apostasy with every one of his letters, realizes that is a losing cause institutionally, authoritatively. There will still be a Christian church, and thank heaven for that. The gates of hell will never fully prevail against that. And even though the woman is in the wilderness for time and times and half a time, she will be nourished there. So thank you, Catholicism. Thank you, Protestantism, for nourishing the woman in the wilderness all of that time. But during that time, there has been a straying from ordinances. There has been a breaking of the everlasting covenant. But I thought you said it was everlasting. Oh, it is. But it will have to be new and everlasting because it has stopped functioning the way it was intended. Christianity has thought that it superseded Judaism, when this is not a doctrine of supersessionism. This is God keeping his covenant with all of his chosen children. This is the covenant that he made with all of us in premortality. Whom shall I send? This is the covenant God made with Adam and Eve on their way out of the Garden of Eden, with angel and altar, promising them through the law of sacrifice and the gospel of Jesus Christ that there would be a way to come back home to the tree of life. This is the covenant God made with Abraham, that in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. This is the covenant through Moses. This is the covenant through Jesus, the dispensation heads, all receiving reminders of an everlasting covenant that was being renewed through them. And in this final dispensation, a final renewal of a covenant that is meant to be everlasting between God and his children. If that covenant, for whatever reason, has been broken to the point that we don't know how to keep a covenant relationship with God, we haven't been able to find authorized ordinances that will bind us together to God in a covenant relationship, there's no one with the authority to bind on earth and have it bound in heaven so that we can be covenant children of God. And so that's what we're up against. Because we've strayed from God's ordinances, because we've broken God's everlasting covenant, what's the result of all of that? What are people left to do? Keep reading. They seek not the Lord to establish his righteousness. Instead, every man walketh in his own way, after the image of his own God, whose image is in the likeness of the world, and whose substance is that of an idol, which waxeth old and shall perish in Babylon, even Babylon the Great, which shall fall. That's the problem of the apostasy. We have replaced Zion with Babylon. Zion has fallen, and Babylon has risen in its place. This is what Isaiah prophesied and warned about. It was happening during his own time period as the Assyrians came in, prophesying of what would happen when the Babylonians came 140 years later, that the wicked world would rise up against Zion and defeat her for a time and times and half a time. not fully eliminate or destroy her. There was still truth. There was still goodness. There were still people striving to keep truth afloat. But ordinances with authority, a covenant that was everlasting but needed to be renewed. Where is God and his righteousness? How do I establish that? Or am I left to just fend for myself and dog eat dog and survival of the fittest and I'm going to do my own thing and make myself into my own God? Oh, that is Babylon. That's the axe boasting against the one who hews with it. That's everything Isaiah warned the Babylonians about. But Babylon will fall. The actual ancient Babylon has long since already done so. The wicked world all around us, the modern Babylon, is yet to fall, but it will. And God wants us to run from it, to safely come unto him instead. This is the great and spacious building that will fall, and great shall be the fall thereof. And it's the voice of warning speaking to everyone in the great and spacious building, come out from her, be clean from her iniquities. By the way, he'll say the same thing even more adamantly in section 133, the appendix of the Doctrine and Covenants, given at the same time as the preface of the Doctrine and Covenants. Bookends, warning us to flee Babylon and come to Zion. Bookends, warning us to flee the great and spacious building and come running to the tree of life. This iron rod will help us get there to partake of the fruit of the love of God. You understand all this? It's incredible what he's doing here, what he's warning us about and inviting us to do. So hearken, open up your ears, and please come running. You've got to emerge from the apostasy. You've got to flee Babylon. In fact, he's so adamant about it, he adds another level and layer to this symbolism. For this, if you jump ahead to verse 36, he says that the Lord will come down in judgment upon Idumea, or the world. He's given us two different metaphors for the same thing. He's trying to flood us with some symbolism in hopes that at least one of them will stick. Or do you know your Babylonian history enough for me to just drop a hint and say, hey, you got to flee Babylon? It's like, oh, I'll leave the wicked world, come running. What if I were to say it differently? God's going to come down in judgment upon Idumea. Well, that's a little less well known by us, but Idumea is Edom. Edom are the descendants of Esau. Oh, Esau versus Jacob, and selling the birthright for a mess of pottage because he cares about his own initial needs more than establishing the righteousness of God. By bringing up Babylon at the beginning of this revelation and Edom at the end of this revelation, whether it's the wicked world bearing down on you, whether it's people that should be part of the covenant, they should know better, but they have broken that everlasting covenant, strayed from those ordinances, and are living a lesser level like Esau chose to do, we have to overcome both of those kinds of downfalls and come running to Zion, no Babylon, to be Jacob, not Esau, to be Israel, not Idumea, to be God's covenant people by making a covenant that will remain everlasting. Ordinances that cement those covenants in place. He could have added Egypt, since that's another image of the wicked world that we must emerge from. Thank you, Joseph in Egypt. Thank you, Moses, for help with that. He could have said Sodom and Gomorrah, another metaphor for the wicked world all around. And we need to be like Lot and warn people and flee without looking back. Section 1 of the Doctrine and Covenants is a collective warning to the world to flee Babylon and Idumea and Egypt and Sodom and Gomorrah and whatever modern day sin city you want to think of. Okay? We have to emerge from the apostasy. And God is inviting us to do so